Eerie legend. Turn the volume up, lock your doors. You're listening to a Saturday night transmission from the Road of Legends. Tonight, we're testing the limits of a dare. They arrived at Maple Hill Cemetery just before midnight, laughing too loudly, the way people do when silence feels dangerous. There were 4 of them, Leo, Sarah, and the twins, Mark and Evan, and the laughter was part bravado, part obligation. It had started with Leo earlier that evening, claiming he could spend the entire night in the hollow without flinching. No phone, no leaving, sunrise or nothing. The others hadn't believed him. Words turned into wagers, wagers hardened into a dare. Now they stood at the edge of the hill, each silently measuring how long they thought the others could last, wondering who would crack first. Above them, the moon hung low, thin and sharp, bright enough to make every headstone look freshly carved. Below, the graves, cut into a limestone hollow, waited the playground. It had been abandoned for decades, but abandonment hadn't softened it. Rust streaked down the swing chains like old dark rain. The slide sagged under its own weight, its ladder bent just enough to suggest it had been climbed long after it should have collapsed. The sandbox sat open and pale, its sand packed flat and smooth, as if it had been tended recently, though no one living claimed responsibility for it. They came with toys, cheap plastic things bought at a gas station on the drive over. Bright colors meant to insult the dark. A yellow dump truck, a red rubber ball, a porcelain doll with a painted smile already beginning to fracture, its glassy eyes too reflective for something meant to be harmless. The toys were placed carefully, almost reverently. The dump truck in the sandbox, the doll at the base of the slide. A small unspoken hesitation followed, as if someone expected the ground to object, as if the playground might reject the offering. Someone checked the time. Midnight was close enough to feel. The story said the children came out then, not drifting shapes, not fog-bound ghosts. The story said they played, that whatever game had been interrupted all those years ago resumed without explanation or mercy. The story said they didn't like to be watched, and they didn't like to be left. The air changed first. Not with wind, not with sound, but with absence. Heat vanished so suddenly it felt taken, as though the hollow itself had inhaled. Skin tightened, breath turned shallow, a low ache settled into joints and fingers, the kind that comes before a storm or an illness. Somewhere above them, the cemetery went perfectly still, as if the hill itself were paying attention. The porcelain doll moved. No one saw what happened. One moment it rested at the bottom of the slide. The next, it sat part way up the ladder, angled toward the platform, one porcelain hand curled neatly around the metal rung. Its dress bore a fresh smear of gray sand. Its face hadn't changed, only its attention. Then the swing screamed. Metal tore through the air, shrill and violent, echoing off of stone and ancient earth. One swing lunged into motion, chains shrieking like something alive and impatient. When someone reached for it, there was no resistance, only a sudden crushing collision, as if something unseen had rushed past at full speed. Breath vanished in a startled gasp. The ground rose hard and fast. Pain flared, bright and disorienting. That's when panic truly arrived. It spread fast, faster than thought, faster than reason. It turned muscle into instinct and memory into noise. The bag of toys was ripped away, plastic scattered across the playground, not falling, but flying. A plastic truck struck metal and came apart. The red rubber ball struck limestone and split with a sharp crack that rang through the hollow, leaving behind a darkened mark in the moonlight. The path back up the hill no longer looked familiar. What should have been a simple incline stretched and twisted, its angles all wrong. Flashlights swept across stone and metal, catching movement where none should have been. Damp impressions appeared on the slide, on the rocks. Small handprints pressed into rust and dust, forming one after another, methodical and curious, too many to count. More appeared on clothing, on shoulders, on backs. Fingers pressed and released, tugged at seams, pulled at hair. The sensation followed soon after. Cold pressure, deliberate and testing, as though something unseen were learning how they were put together. One of them stumbled. Hands reached out to help and met only open space. A laugh followed, thin, breathless, far too close to the ear. Knees struck gravel, hard enough to still breath, leaving warmth that faded, quickly drawn down into the sand as if the ground were thirsty. In the sandbox, the yellow dump truck began to move. It rolled in a jagged circle, wheels grinding softly through the sand. The air above it bent and shimmered, distorted by something small and restless. Short tracks appeared beside it, uneven, overlapping. A giggle followed, high and brittle, like glass cracking underfoot, multiplied until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The hollow grew heavier. Every step felt resisted, as though the ground itself had grown possessive. Legs burned, lungs refused to work properly. Sleeves were yanked, shoes were stepped on by something with no weight, but with undeniable intent. The playground no longer felt empty. It felt crowded. The porcelain doll had climbed again. Now it sat at the top of the slide, legs dangling, head turning slowly to follow the teenagers scrambling below. Its painted eyes reflected light that they did not create. A thin crack split its cheek, and something shadowed glimmered inside it, as if the smile were finally giving way. Then everything stopped. No wind, no breath, no sound. All four swings lifted at once, chains stretched tight, seats held high at the peak of their arc. They remained there, suspended, creaking softly under the pressure of hands no one could see. Shadows pulled beneath them, layered and deep, as if the ground itself were far more occupied than it appeared. A voice followed, close, dry, patient. It asked them not to leave. It reminded them that recess had only just begun. When the weight lifted, it did so reluctantly. The pressure eased in stages, like fingers loosening one by one. They ran when they were allowed to, when the air loosened its grip. They scrambled up the hill, over the wall, into the waiting dark of the road beyond, breaths ragged, legs trembling, never once looking back. Dawn came eventually. Of course it did. Dawn always does. They left things behind, but the children didn't let them leave. Not truly. Lights stay on at night. Sleep comes thin and shallow. Scratches appear on bedroom doors. Toys shift where they shouldn't. And, when their time comes, they'll join the children in their endless playtime. Because somewhere in Huntsville, Alabama, there is a playground that remembers being full. And it is still waiting for someone to come back and finish the game. This has been a Saturday night transmission. Until next time, stay vigilant on the road of legends.